This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But it's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI's not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. Their clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. They offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions that isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will find that their mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the healthcare they deserve. Because they believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, and today we are talking about co-parenting. So if you're a mom right now who's navigating the separation or divorce and you want to protect your kids, reduce the conflict between you and your ex, and stop carrying all the emotional load of co-parenting, or if you have a friend who is going through this experience, you're going to want to pay attention during this episode. We're going to have so many great tips for you because separation doesn't end the parenting relationship, it just reshapes it. Communication with an ex can feel really tense, loaded, or unpredictable. And even when parents are trying to keep it civil, conflict leaks through. Co-parenting isn't about agreement or emotional closeness. It's about structure, boundaries, and emotional safety for kids. And in this episode, we're going to talk about why the communication breaks down after the separation, what collaborative co-parenting actually means, and how to reduce the conflict and protect your kids. So stay with us because understanding why co-parenting feels so hard is the first step to making it lighter. And this conversation is going to give you practical ways to protect your kids without carrying all the emotional load yourself. And to do that, today we're joined by Gabriella Pomare. Gabriella is a family lawyer, award-winning author, and co-parenting advocate who has dedicated her career to helping families navigate separation with dignity and clarity. She brings both professional experience and lived experience to this work, having supported countless families and having walked through the co-parenting journey herself. Gabriella's debut book, The Collaborative Co-Parent, has already received international recognition, including being named a distinguished favorite in the parenting category of the 2025 NYC Big Book Awards and a finalist in the 2025 Able Book Awards. She's also a mom to 2 young children, ages 5 and 1, which deeply informs her child-centered approach to co-parenting. Her work focuses on helping parents reduce conflict, communicate more effectively, and create more stability across 2 homes. And with that, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the podcast, Gabriella. I'm so happy to have you here and so thankful you've joined us since it is right now 5:30 a.m. in Sydney, Australia, where you are.
It is, but I'm so excited to chat with you. I've been really looking forward to this.
Well, and I am looking forward to it as well because I have had several friends go through this co-parenting arrangement, and a lot of the members of our No Guilt Mom Circle community are going through this as well. And I know many parents, they don't set out to co-parent poorly, but this separation, it brings grief and anger and fear and unfinished emotional business. So based on what you've seen and what you've gone through, why does communication so often deteriorate after separation, even when both parents care about their kids?
Absolutely. I think it's such a big life-changing experience. It's not really just a logistical change. And I often refer to it as a bit of a nervous system earthquake, right? Even parents who love their kids so much, you're carrying grief, you're carrying anger, fear, loss of identity, often financial stress. You're going through a division of your assets and your finances, and very often and sadly, betrayal. So all of a sudden, every single message, whether it's about school shoes or pickup times, it's being filtered through a really stressed nervous system instead of a calm one. So what I
Uh-huh.
always say to people I work with, and I know what I experienced, is stop thinking about the idea of conflict. You're not, just talking anymore about logistics. You're talking through all this unresolved emotion. And so something as simple as, and trust me, it's happened to me, can you bring the jumper back, or you're running a bit late? It lands with the other co-parent as, control or criticism, a bit of a power struggle, and someone's already
Mm,
feeling very raw. And I think what happens is parents start spiraling over something so simple that probably would have meant nothing after separation, right? I
right.
and I remember she said to me, "We used to communicate fine about everything, and now we can't even communicate about lunchboxes, right?" And what I said was, "It's because you're not actually communicating about lunchboxes. You've got all this unresolved trust and control and grief
Mm.
issues." So I think when a parent feels like their nervous system is threatened, their communication breaks down and it becomes more sharper and defensive and avoidant. And that's the issue we face when we go through separation.
Yeah, you're so right. You're not talking about lunch boxes. It's like key to like any conflict in communication. And it's something that I teach to our members is that usually what you're fighting about isn't the thing you're fighting about. There's always that unresolved conflict in it. Oh, I think that's such like a huge, huge point, Gabriella. Gabriella, in your book, you talk a lot about healing, not just moving on. So, for parents who are still angry or hurt, what does this real healing actually look like? And why is it so important before trying to co
Yeah, I
parent?
think that's a very important one. And it is something I do speak a lot about in my book because, for me anyway, moving on, it's external. But healing is really where you do the internal work. You could be at work, you could even be in a new relationship, and it looks like you're functioning really well, but you're still very emotionally reactive every time maybe your ex's name pops up on your phone. So I think real healing looks like, your body is not getting tense and spiking up when you see a message come from them, or when you're able to finally read something neutral without inventing some big high conflict story around it. So it's what I refer to as responding instead of reacting, and not needing to win or prove anything. And that's when I think you can say, as a separated parent, I'm in that healing stage. So many people I work with say I'm fine, and then they'll leave my office and they'll send a 10-paragraph email, arguing about something with their co-parent about a 5 or 10 minute issue. So this tells me that their nervous system, it's still in that protection mode. They haven't healed. And I think realistically,
Right.
healing matters because you're not co-parenting from logic. It's emotion. It's your nervous system like we were talking about before. So while you're still feeling unsafe and unprotected, you're not healing. You're not going to be able to communicate and co-parent well. So you've got to do your own emotional work. I think don't shy away from things like therapy. So many adults these days are
Hmm.
fearful of working with a good therapist or working on themselves because they think, is there something wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with that. Accept that. Work on
Right.
yourself and go on that journey of being able to heal and move forward. So not only are you a better co-parent, but a good parent generally.
Right, and I'm such a big proponent of
Mhm.
therapy. Therapy has helped me become less emotionally reactive, and I've just seen wonders happen. Now I know this question is going to be asked by people, and I have a feeling of how you're gonna answer, but when it comes to healing, how long should people expect that healing to take place? Like, what should they expect? What kind of buffer should they give themselves to expect themselves to be healed in this relationship to be able to
Yeah, look,
co-parent?
realistically, it's a journey and everyone's going to be different. But it takes time. I mean, as I said, you're grieving this family that you lost. You thought you were going to grow up together. You're going to have the beautiful birthday parties, the Christmases, the holidays. And all of a sudden, you find yourself on your own and starting over. So, co parenting is a difficult journey. And that healing process, it's not going to be a week, it's not going to be 3 months. I often find it's even over a 12-month period. I mean, I can say from my own experience, I was a terrible co parent the first
Yeah.
12 months. I was healing, I was raw, I was trying to work
Mm.
out what am I going to do in my life now, and where am I going from here? What is my new journey? So I think after about 12 months, I had this real, and I call it a gotcha moment, where I said, you need to start doing something differently, right? I could see that the way I was communicating with
Mm.
my ex-husband wasn't healthy for my son, who at that point I think was 1 year. Yeah, he was one. So I said at that point, work on yourself. Find something that makes you happy. Go on your journey. And for me, it was creativity. It was writing. It was getting involved in other things, and it was really starting my book. So when people say, how long is it going to take? How long is a piece of string? Maybe it's to do with finding something that makes you happy, finding your purpose again, and then aligning that with your healing journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you recommend people to deal with it if maybe they're working on their own healing, but their ex really isn't working on their own healing, nor does their ex have any clue that they need to be working on their healing in the first place? What do you advise in that situation?
Isn't that the reality of almost all exes, right? Every co-parenting relationship. There is usually one person who really wants to put in the hard work and the other person who might still be causing the issues. And that might just be because they've got so much, unresolved conflict, anger, emotion, betrayal. I think as co-parents, you need to sort of have that conversation. And if you're working with someone who just isn't getting on the same page, who isn't putting their child at the forefront of decisions, you need to show up and give them reasons to do that. Because what a lot of social science tells us is a child's experience of their parents' divorce is what shapes them into their future. Their adult relationships, their marriages. So if you can sort of explain that and show that to your ex, that hopefully is the catapulting moment for them to say, I need to do better too. And if you're just with someone who is incredibly difficult, we might be talking about someone very high conflict, someone narcissistic, it may not work, but you need to put in place your own communication strategies, your own boundaries to help make that relationship easier and perhaps more businesslike.
So without giving away any names or anything, can you think of any stories of someone who has done that successfully that you've seen or heard about?
I think so. I seriously had a lady last week with this exact issue. She's in a very high conflict relationship, co-parenting. They're arguing about parenting arrangements for their children, and she just wants to do it more collaboratively, to use a word, right? He's not interested. He wants the high conflict text messages. He sends her barrages of messages every day over little things. If she's running half an hour late to a changeover, she's being harassed. So what I ultimately said is, it's not going to work. You both aren't going to be able to communicate like friends. So let's make it more like a business-like relationship. So they started using one of these co-parenting apps.
Okay.
And that's worked really well to put in place those boundaries. It measures the tone of their communications. It puts in place blocks for when there's something high conflict or rude or aggressive, and it gives him, gives her that power, I suppose, back, where she can block his number now. She doesn't have to be bombarded with text messages, and they can focus on only communicating about the things that matter most, the practical realities of, living with and sharing their children.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of these co-parenting apps. You mentioned a little bit about what it does,
They're
but
brilliant.
Can you explain that more? Because I've
They
never
are
heard of
so
it.
good, particularly in high conflict dynamics. There's one called Our Family Wizard, and I know it's available internationally. And what's really interesting is you will be able to draft a text message, right? And if you are becoming aggressive in what you're writing, it'll pop up as red, and it won't allow you to press send. My relationship.
That'd be good for anyone, yeah.
If you're trying to guilt trip your ex-partner into something, so making them feel really guilty about something they're doing, again, it'll pop up with a warning sign. So it really helps to measure that communication style. And it only really allows you to talk about things really relevant to your children. So, not why were you out with your new girlfriend at the movies last week, so-and-so saw you. It's really just going to be, when's changeover? My daughter was doing well at school. She had an exam, or she's got a swimming carnival next week, things like that.
So is this something that a hard to deal with ex would then have to get in on as well? Does this actually protect the woman in the relationship from getting texts from him that are horrible?
Usually there needs to be agreement. But as I said to my client, you need to take back that power, and it's not always easy. I accept that. I make it sound easy. But if you simply send a text saying, your number's being blocked, say for emergencies, I'm not going to, deal with these communications every day. Here's the app I've downloaded. Here's the link to it. We'll be communicating only through there, and you can share photos and calendars and all sorts of things. So I know in my line of work, I try and always implement in any parenting agreement that the two parents use the app. And that way, if conflict starts in a year or two, they're not back at lawyer's office spending lots of money. They're using this app, and there's a strategy in place when the communication does break down. And that's because the reality is it often doesn't break down straight away. You might be having a really healthy co-parenting relationship. And a year later or 2 years later, when things change, either kids are older or someone's repartners, which I think is the biggest catalyst for it, that's when the communication breaks down and parents need the help.
That is so interesting. Like right there, Gabriella, I think that you gave everyone such a easy strategy that they could implement in their own relationships. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a shared framework for collaborative co-parenting. And we'll do that right after this. Okay, real talk. I have approximately 47,000 photos on my phone. I wish I was joking. And every year I tell myself, this is the year I'm going to do something with all of these memories. And then I don't. Because who has time to sit there arranging photos into layouts for hours? Well, I finally did it. And I need to tell you about Journey Print because it was honestly so much easier than I expected. Here is what blew my mind. Their AI auto arranges your photos into this beautiful book in seconds. You upload your pictures from your phone and their smart algorithm organizes everything by date and location. It even adds maps. So my book isn't just random photos, it's actually the story of our year. I made this year in review book and flipping through it with my kids, seeing our trip to Paris last year, the first day of school where my daughter's a senior, and even just silly everyday moments, it hit me how fast this year went. And now we have this gorgeous, gorgeous book to hold on to because the quality is premium, like really nice satin paper. And they plant a tree for every order, which I love. Creating it took me maybe 15 minutes. That's it. No joke. Go to journeyapp.com/podcast/NGM and use code no guilt to get 30% off your next purchase. That's Journey spelled JOURNIAPP.com/podcast/NGM and use code no guilt at checkout. For years, I avoided tracking my spending because every time I looked at where my money went, all I felt was shame. Like, why did I spend that much on groceries? I shouldn't have bought that. It was like a highlight reel of all my worst financial decisions. And that shame, it kept me stuck. I couldn't make any real progress toward my goals because I was too busy beating myself up about the past. Set yourself up for financial success this year. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts, and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this year and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code NOGUILT. What changed everything for me was finding a tool that keeps me focused on where I'm going, not where I've been. Monarch shows me my savings goals, my debt payoff timeline, my whole financial picture in one place. So instead of dwelling on last month's mistakes, I'm actually planning ahead and watching myself get closer to real milestones. No shame, just progress. Set yourself up for financial success in 2026 with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes proactive money management simple all year long. Use code NOGUILT at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code NOGUILT. When I was an elementary school teacher, I saw firsthand how beautifully different every kid is. Some thrived working independently, others lit up during in-depth projects, and others excelled in completely different ways. And the best part, when kids get to learn in the way that works for them, amazing things happen. And that's exactly why so many families are turning to K-12 powered schools. These are tuition-free, online accredited public schools for kindergarten through 12th grade. And if the traditional classroom isn't a perfect fit for your child, K-12 can help them thrive. K-12 knows that every student learns differently, whether your child needs more flexibility or an education that's more personalized. K-12 will give them the support they need. Students learn at their own pace with curriculum tailored to meet their goals, needs, and interests, all taught by state-certified teachers who are trained in online education with hands-on, innovative technology that makes learning interactive. K-12 has more than 25 years experience helping students gain the skills they truly need to thrive in the future, and it could be perfect for your child too. Join the more than 3 million families who have been served by K-12 and empower your student to reach their full potential now. You can make the switch at any time. Go to k12.com/NGM today to learn more. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/NGM. K12.com/NGM. We've talked already about how collaborative co-parenting can sound really idealistic or unrealistic, especially when one parent feels difficult or uncooperative. Gabriella, how do you define collaborative co-parenting in a way that feels realistic for high conflict
Okay,
situations?
I want to be really clear. Collaborative co parenting certainly doesn't mean you're best friends, you're having coffee together, you're going out for dinners, or that you're agreeing on everything, because that's not reality. For me, what a collaborative co parent really is, you're both consistently making decisions through that really child focused lens, instead of through ego or instead of through an emotional lens. And I think in really high conflict situations, collaboration often looks really structured, clear boundaries, predictable routines, and minimal emotional content, keeping everything really maybe neutral, trying to keep everything through written communication and agreed systems. And when you're organized like that, I think that brings closeness. So it's not about really, as I said, becoming best friends or trying to recreate a relationship that once was. That's gone. That romantic relationship is gone, and this more business-like relationship is created. And I really think that once you start doing that and you start processing good structures rather than emotion, you're becoming more collaborative. And I think realistically, it's a skill set. It has to be learned.
So I'm hearing more business-like and less like feeling like you're best friends. And in there, you mentioned clear boundaries. What are some boundaries that you have seen put in place that have really helped that co-parenting relationship?
Really importantly, it's a rule that you don't rehash the past. Too many parents still try and bring up, unresolved issues in their text messages, changeovers in their communication. That's got to be a big no. I think the reality is you need to have a very good and clear communication plan in place, because that is what is going to guide your co-parenting relationship. A lot of people have rules in place. So, for example, that you don't reply to a text message after 8 p.m. because you don't want that trigger late at night when, you're in your own personal space, you're winding down, you're trying to get some rest. I think a lot of parents think that, collaboration and co-parenting means we've got to like each other, we need to trust each other, and we need to agree on everything. You don't. You just need to have those rules in place.
Right. And one of the biggest hurdles of boundaries is that many people don't understand that boundaries are something that you will do and not something that you expect the other person to do. So there's always this you need to have a plan for when that boundary is going to be crossed. So say you have the boundary where I will not rehash the past, and your ex starts rehashing the past and everything that you did to wrong them. What is a good way to respond to that?
But isn't that when I suppose you block out the communication? So again, it's about taking back that power and saying, I'm not responding. I'm not going to engage in a conversation that either isn't positive, that doesn't move us forward, and that isn't child focused and about, day-to-day arrangements for our child. So sometimes it can be difficult because you'll read that message and you'll say, oh, I want to fight back. I want to win this argument. I really want to prove my point. It's not worth it. And that's probably part of the healing journey and the journey post-separation itself, in the sense that initially you probably will want to fight back. You'll want to win. But as you go through that healing journey and you feel more healed and more confident and you've taken back that power and you're really straight and clear with your boundaries, I do believe you'll be in the position to just say, stop, I'm not doing this. I'm not engaging in this.
You don't even have to say that. You don't even have to say, stop, I'm not engaging. Would ignoring just be okay if you've already said those boundaries pretty explicitly?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the reality is once you're ignoring, it often makes that person angrier, but it can make them realize, hang on, she or he is no longer engaging. I'm sort of fighting a battle where someone's not responding, so why am I doing it? And it can work one of both ways, I suppose. That person could get angrier and keep bombarding you with messages, or the opposite, where they give up.
Yeah. What happens when you have an ex who, instead of fighting you, just completely ignores you? ignores the requests for kids, like pickups, doesn't respond, say, like, there is a fee due for your child for a school activity, and they just flat out ignore you. How do you recommend dealing with that sort of co parent?
Yeah, and I think the reality is that's not really a collaborative co-parenting relationship
No.
or co-parenting at all.
Mhm.
You're probably engaging in more of what we call a parallel parenting arrangement where you're both looking after your children, you're making decisions, but you're not really doing it together. So there needs to be really clear rules in place, and couples like that realistically are likely to have some sort of parenting plan or court orders in place because it's very hard to be flexible when you can't constantly communicate, when you can't agree on things, and when you've got
Right.
one parent who is blocking the other one out. So there will
No.
be different strategies to put in place to parent. And it might just be, my week with the kids or my couple of days with the kids. This is how we do things. And it's very difficult because you don't know what's going on in the other person's house. You're constantly wondering, are my kids okay? Are they safe? Are they feeling loved? But you need to unfortunately let go of that control a little bit because the reality is you won't know. And there aren't two parents who will be able to communicate and say, this is how we do things. So again, it probably does come down to that emotional work, working on yourself, your own therapy, your own healing, to be able to process and deal and live with that.
Well, something that I see a lot, and there's quite a few No Guilt Mom Circle members who have experienced this as well, is like they then take on the burden of financially providing for their children if the co parent doesn't respond to these messages. And what I hear you saying is there needs to be a court order in place. So, like, as a family lawyer, like, how do you advise these women to attack that situation really because they're taking on too much of the load of the burden. Their co-parent is kind of getting to ignore all the financial decisions and everything like that.
Mm.
What is something women can do to stand up against that?
It's a difficult one because every country, every state, every different jurisdiction will have different rules in place about child support and how parents need to show up and pay for their children. But what I see way too often, even with my own clients, is dad not paying for kids
Yeah.
or dad using money and financial pressures as that real sticking point for arguments, a bribe almost. I'm not going to pay for the holiday. I'm not going to pay for that extracurricular activity, tennis or swimming or a certain summer camp
Uh-huh.
until you start agreeing to some of my demands. And then we're really engaging in a toxic and difficult co-parenting relationship. And the only person suffering is the child.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
is the reality of it. But you're not going to be able to stress that or get that through to someone who is particularly narcissistic or
Uh-huh.
difficult or high conflict. That is their personality, and we need to realize we can't change that. All
Yeah.
we can do is show up. We can be the good parent. We can put in place the good structures for our child to try and shield them from that, because the worst thing we can do, and people often fall into the trap, is involving their child in that, saying, the reason we're not going to summer camp this year is because dad's not paying for it, or you can't play soccer because dad won't pay for the enrollment fees and we can't afford it. That creates guilt and really complex emotions for a child.
Uh-huh.
So it's something I really don't recommend. I say no matter what, you protect your child and you do not involve them in adult discussions and your own conflict and emotions, right? So
Right.
that probably is why so many mums end up saying, I'll just pay for it myself. And half the time we
Right.
can't afford it, but we say, I don't want my kids to miss out. Why should they feel different to the other kids at school? So you're in a really tricky situation and dynamic. But at the end of the day, my view is if you can afford it and you can pay for it, let your child benefit from that rather than engaging in long-term conflict with your ex who isn't going to show up.
So basically, it's one of those situations where you do have to let it go and let go of the control of it. Like there's no perfect world in which you can get them to. And I'm thinking of you as a lawyer. I'm like, there's no legal way to make them pay.
No, it's a bit of a loss, right? I mean, you can end up in court for years. And as I said, every place where people are living slightly different. I know over here, it gets to a point where you cannot force someone to pay for things that they're not going to outside of their legal obligation. And the reality of that is it's often very low. Child support is often way less than what a child actually costs to raise. And that is the difficulty. So sometimes my advice, right or wrong, is can we try and keep things low conflict, at least while we're working out things like who's going to pay for what, and getting that all put into either some sort of parenting plan, a child support agreement, court orders, because I know that in the future, as soon as conflict starts, all of that's going to break down, and that's when the problems really start.
Right. Okay. Well, this is like so interesting about like what collaborative co-parenting really means, that you don't have to get along with your ex. You don't have to be best friends. You just have to have this little structured business relationship. And coming up next, we're going to get into the actual strategies that you could use on how to reduce your conflict with your ex and how to protect your kids right after this.
DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse, is the one-stop shop for all your footwear needs. With sneakers, boots, and everything in between for every style, mood, and occasion, you'll definitely find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW has what you need, but more importantly, they have what you didn't even know you wanted. You never know what you'll find at DSW. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget at DSW stores or DSW.com.
We all have those nightmare scenario moments that make your heart race. When you're lying in bed and realize you didn't lock the front door. Or you've left for the day and remember the stove is still on. Or even worse, you get home to find that someone's broken a window. ADT understands how unsettling it is to feel unsafe at home or unprepared for an emergency. That's why they're here, for the moments when every second counts. With customizable security systems that keep watch 24/7, with the most company-operated monitoring centers in the industry, with technology that enables first responders to send help even faster. And because they understand how important your space is to you, their ADT Plus app allows you to check in on your home from virtually anywhere, so you can rest easy knowing that everything's okay. ADT helps make sure your home is your haven, not another thing to worry about. Visit ADT.com or call 1-800-ADT-ASAP. When every second counts, count on ADT.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Kids feel tension even when parents think they're hiding it, and long-term exposure to this conflict really shapes how safe children feel. So, Gabriella, when co-parenting is just going really, really wrong, how can parents do a co-parenting reset instead of just pushing through?
This is so important, and this is something I feel so strongly about because so many people say to me, we're not co-parenting well, so we're never going to be able to be. And that's just wrong. I think it wouldn't matter if you've been separated a year, 5 years, 10 years, you can always reset. And really, a reset starts with slowing down rather than escalating. It's saying to yourself, I want to do things differently. I am failing my child. And that is simply because every time they see an eye roll, a shrug of the shoulders, that heightened emotion when you're getting a text message, they are being impacted and affected. So I think realistically, parents think they should push harder when things start going wrong. Send more messages, argue a little bit more, explain, over-explain, take things on. But the reality of that is it's inflaming the system. So reset means stepping back and asking yourself, what isn't working here? What part of our relationship just isn't functioning well? Is it communication? Are the boundaries in place not working? Perhaps I've put in place unclear expectations, they're unrealistic, or do we just have really, old emotional wounds, a lack of structure? And I think realistically that reset then involves tightening your systems in place. And it might mean working together with a good family therapist, a co-parenting coordinator. It might involve, as we spoke about earlier, trialing parallel parenting for a period of time until you get back on track. And I've really seen families shift by simply changing how and when they communicate, the modes of communication they use. So not really what they're saying to each other, but how they're saying it. So redesigning your system is the reset and not blaming the other person for what's going wrong.
Got it. So really looking to see where the conflict lies in your system. And even you mentioned the taking the separation apart, the parallel parenting. What, when parents come back together, if they decide to try collaborative co-parenting, you have a strategy to communicate with each other, the 4 pillars of communication. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So they are listen, pause, reflect, and respond. And for me, they change the dynamic of every co-parenting relationship. So listening really means, what is that other person saying? Not just I've picked up the phone and I'm hearing you, but it's I'm really listening to what you're saying. I'm taking the time and having the respect to hear you through, not interrupting you. But pause is really so important. That power of the pause will change everything. And that might mean, a couple of minutes, even a couple of days, so that you can then reflect, right? Because not every bit of communication needs a response straight away. And it's often when you're shooting back and you're rushing your response that conflict is then heightened, problems then arise, and then that relationship breaks down. So go back, reflect on what's being said, reflect on the ideal outcome. What do I actually want to get out of this? What is going to benefit my child? And then you start going back with a response that's structured, that makes sense, and that always has your child at the forefront of your mind. That is so important. And what I say and what I've experienced is, think about if my child was reading the response, if they were going to see what I'm saying to my ex, to my co-parent, would they be proud of me? And that will often shift the way you respond and the tone and the nature of what you're writing.
Got it. So listen, pause, reflect, respond, which I think is great advice to anyone communicating with anybody. When you have clients use this listen, pause, reflect, respond, is there a specific step of that they have the most trouble with?
I think it's the pause, because it's human nature to just want to hurry up and write back to win, right?
Yeah.
And that's life, that's reality, but don't engage in that emotional bait. As hard as it is, the best thing you can learn is to really slow everything down, right? Slow down and, again, take back that power, take back that control, and you get to decide. You control the side of the system. You can control what's happening next by pausing. Because when you don't
Right.
take the time to go away and reflect on what it is you truly want to say and the outcome you want to reach, conflict gets heightened. You don't end up getting what you want out of the decision, and things are rushed.
Yeah, like it all kind of builds on one another, which I hear you saying, because I mean, if you have a hard time pausing, it could be that you are still in the healing phase. And that is something that you need to go back and look at and work on. But even in parenting, like just every day, the pause is most often the biggest struggle for so many moms because we get stuck in that emotional response. And I like how you call it emotional bait because it really is. It's like, here's a trigger and bam, there you explode.
And they know what to say to trigger you. That is the reality of it. You probably experienced it while you were together. It's only going to get worse when you're separated. I know the first thing that, and I sadly do it sometimes, and I have to pull myself up also, is that if I really want to make my co-parent annoyed or get them to give in to what I want, you say something emotional, you bring something up from the past, which is terrible and it's wrong. But it takes everyone time to learn that. And as I said, it's a journey, and I'm still on it too.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's like how they call like yoga, for instance, a practice. It's because you never get good at it. You're practicing every day. From your experience, Gabriella, what is the biggest difference that parents can do to help their kids feel secure when they're moving across two homes?
I think 100% it has to be predictability, stability, emotional safety. Those three things are so important for children in every family, but in particular in a separated family when they're transitioning between homes. The reality is kids feel safest when they know what's happening, who's picking them up, when, where their things are, what the rules are in each home, and when they know that they're not having to manage the adult emotions. I mean, I've seen kids thrive in really high conflict situations when the structure is solid and, parents are keeping the kids emotionally out of the middle. They're not being used as those communication messages, right? One of the biggest things I tell people is children don't need perfect parents. They don't. What they really need is emotionally regulated parents and predictable, stable systems. And that's what will work and help them into their futures.
Yeah. Oh, I so agree with that. And as we wrap up, in your opinion, what is one mindset shift or tool that you wish every separated parent could apply right now?
There's no winning. I think we all think when we separate, I need to win. I need to come out on top. I need to be the better parent. And we see that in the co-parenting dynamic. You see it, for example, over Christmas, which we just had. I'm going to buy the bigger, the better, the more expensive present to buy my child's love. That's not what works for a child. It's that emotional safety. It's that checking in with your child. How are you feeling? How are things going for you? what can mum and dad or what can us as parents do better for you? And that is what will benefit your child in the long term, not the money, not the presents, not coming out as the more loved or desired parent. And I think that's really important.
That is such a good takeaway. And Gabriella, thank you so much for joining us. You've given so many great strategies, including the co-parenting app, which I'm going to share with everyone I know who's in a co-parenting situation. And your 4
Yes.
pillars of communication are such great advice for anyone communicating in high conflict. Gabriella, to end this on a really positive note, I like to ask all guests this. What is something that you are looking forward to in your future right now?
In my future, I just think it's continuing doing what I'm doing. I love being creative. So being a lawyer is fun and helping people is fun, but I love getting out there, speaking to people, doing things like this. So for 2026, I think a bit of what I'm manifesting is a lot more travel, going out there, meeting more people, and hopefully helping more families. Because realistically, if I can just change one family's life, I'm doing something right. I needed the help and I realized that, and I can only keep spreading the message and what's been working for me.
Excellent. I love that. I feel like I'm very purpose driven like that as well. Just spreading the message, helping more people, impacting more people. And that is like my biggest source of happiness as well. So that's incredible to hear. Well, thank you, Gabriella, so much. And for those of you out in podcast land, I have put links in the show notes, especially to that app that Gabriella recommended, as well as the link to her book. And Gabriella, we didn't really give a pitch for your book. Tell us about your book and where people can get it.
Yes, absolutely. So it's called The Collaborative Co-Parent, of course. It's available everywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, online. Grab a copy if you're interested. I think what it does is really give you that roadmap of from the day you separate, waking up saying, what do I do now? This is my life, through to how do I come up with the parenting arrangements, the 4 pillars of communication, blended families, step parents, all those sorts of things. So hopefully you'll find 1 or 2 pieces of advice in there that helps.
Excellent. And you can find the link down there in the show notes as well. So, everybody out there, remember the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you, and I will talk with you later. If you'd like to support the show further, you can share episodes with your loved ones, leave a positive review, or follow us on social media at No Guilt Mom. You could also show your love by visiting our amazing podcast sponsors. We have a link in the show notes.
This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But it's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI's not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. Their clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. They offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions that isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will find that their mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the healthcare they deserve. Because they believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.